All right, welcome everybody. We're doing a little bit of a solo cast today. Haven't done one of these in a while. I've wanted to lots, and I've just kind of been, I don't know if a funk is the right thing to call it, but since I stepped back from work and, jumped off to do this full time, right at the start of that came with a lot of changes and also a lot of personal things that if you're a longtime listener to the podcast, you'll know all about. But it was a lot to take in all at once. It was a lot of changes, and almost it's taken me this month and a half, 2 months to just sort out all my feelings on a lot of things. I was so caught up in the momentum of life for a long time that I think I really needed this time to kind of think things through and see where I think some of that unhappiness was stemming from. And a lot of it is coming to light of, which it's so funny that this should surprise me, but so much of it is personal. And I think there's people around me that saw that too and were kind of worried. I think like my parents and stuff that, hey, maybe this isn't all just work. Maybe you're laying all of this at the feet of this job that you're not enjoying, and maybe there's some more stuff going. And I think, there was some truth to that. And I think, what I'm feeling now is very different than what I was feeling then, but also has some of the same things. Like I'm still struggling with sleeping. I'm not sleeping very well, which I wasn't before, was not sleeping at all, really was up all night stressing. And now I'm pretty much up all night just thinking about all the things I need to do for the podcast and for this. And that hasn't changed much. And it kind of just went from stressing about work and how much dread I was having to go back into it and to take on all the stress of it. And then also too, I haven't completely disconnected from work, and there is a lot of stress there too. And I know that it's, in giant quotation marks, not my problem, but it is. And I care. And to watch all the people that I haven't left behind per se, but to watch them now struggle to deal with all the things we were dealing with before, but now without my help. And there's a lot of guilt there too. And that's kind of an interesting thing to manage, or to just wrap my head around, of where I stand now within the company and how much to take on. And the funny thing about that is it's not really a choice. It's kind of, you take on what you take on. And that's what I found. I mean, if I could pick and choose what I took on and what I didn't take on, I think I would have been a lot less unhappy. I think that was where I would look at my dad and see all these stressful, crazy things going on, and just the way life kicks you in the ass 6 weeks from Sunday, it feels like, and just to let it roll off your back. And I really couldn't do that now. I thought disconnecting from it was, the right play, but I don't think I, as of yet, have fully been able to do that. So that's been kind of interesting to navigate, and that's kind of where I'm sitting now. And I think a lot of that was highlighted by what I want to talk to you guys about today, was my trip last week to Slave Lake. It was an amazing thing that I don't really think I realized how much I needed in my life, and how much it was going to affect me. And I came out of that trip to Slave Lake when I got back to Grand Prairie Saturday night and was watching the Oilers game. And then after that, my mind was just racing, and it was almost the first time I'd felt how I used to feel all the time, of just being full of energy, full of passion for these new ideas are just coming left, right, and center. I, was inventing new blockchain technologies in my head, and ways that it's going to change the world, and thinking of scenarios for work, like I said, and thinking of scenarios for the podcast, the things I need to do, and really was a nice feeling. And I kind of had forgotten how my mind works when it's really happy and really passionate and really turned on. I think I had kind of forgotten about that. So just to bring things back to the trip, I was heading down there. The plan was to go down Wednesday of last week and then stay till Friday or Saturday, seeing what I could get with podcasts. In the days leading up to it, I was, I always thought when I go to Slave Lake, I'm going to have episodes out the ass to record. And I probably reached out to 10, 15 people and just got, I'm busy. I got this. And just, it was really tough to get episodes. And I think that was a bit of a tough one to eat too, just because I care so much. And I love this podcast so much, and I believe in it. And I think it's going to be such a powerful thing in the future that it's hard to take that people aren't just as excited to get the opportunity to come on. And I think lots of people are, most people are. It's just scary as well. And sometimes it's hard to remember that, like, yes, they do. People want to come on. They're just worried. It's just nervous. And once they do it, they have a good time. And it's a lot to ask. Even people that have been on before, it's still a bit nerve wracking for people. They don't do this all the time. So I was trying to keep that in mind, but it was a little bit down. And by the time I left, for Slave Lake on the on the Wednesday, there was I didn't really have anybody booked. I had nobody locked in for that podcast with while I was there, and I just figured, you know what, I'm going anyways. If nobody I can podcast with, at least hopefully I'll be able to get see some friends, and I don't know, just something drew me. I knew I needed to go there, maybe subconsciously. Anyways, got a call on the drive in that was very interesting. From a family friend of ours. His son's been on the podcast, Hunter Moellem. He's an amazing artist and really interesting cat. And got a call from his dad, Joey, and he just said, hey, I want to introduce you to some people the next day. And I didn't really know what I was getting into. He didn't give me much information to go on. But it was kind of cool. Joey was one of the guys I wanted to ask about coming on the podcast anyway. I thought, oh, perfect. A meeting at his office. Maybe I can see if I can get him on the podcast. We'll see what happens. And I'm interested. I'm always, I got a exploratory mind, and I like to see what other ideas people come up with. I'm always interested to at least hear them out. So my mind was racing from the time I hung up that phone call till the time 9 a.m. rolled around the next morning to go in there. So sorry, I skipped past. That night was really nice. Got to see my parents. They were in town just that night, and then they were going back to the city on Thursday. Watched the Oiler game with my dad. Saw them, had a little nice evening with them. Nothing too crazy. Wake up in the morning, and I go over to Joey's office, and he introduces me to two young men from Lacrete, Alberta, which is a town, quite northern town in Alberta, and it's a very particular community. It has a very strong Mennonite culture and background. That might be an understatement. Pretty much the whole community is a Mennonite community, and they run things very particularly, that and high level. And through work, these last 5-6 years, I had gotten to know that community a little bit better. And I think for anybody that has never got to experience them, I don't think you'll be able to understand where they come from. But walking in the door, I recognized these two kids looked, just before I even said anything, I knew they're from Lacrete. I could just tell from the look of them anyway, but I didn't know who they were. And then Joey, we sit down, the four of us, and we just start talking. And between Joey and the two brothers, they're brothers from Lacrete, Ben and Joseph. And I got to tell you guys, my mind was blown by these guys. They tell me their story, and it is just the most amazing and heartbreaking and wrenching. And like, their story is just phenomenal. They've lost everything. They've been hoodwinked. They've been tricked. They've been excommunicated. They've been kicked every way you can be kicked. But they never lost their passion. They never lost their fire, and their passion is for crypto. For those people listening, if it makes it, Bitcoin, Ethereum, right? Like the basics of it. But they're way deeper than that. They're into blockchain technology, NFTs. They're in everything now. They have a great understanding of it, and this has been built up over years of them trying and making mistakes and failing and rising again from the ashes. And the story was just mind blowing. So we talked for probably, the four of us probably talked for 3 hours, and then Joey had to get on with his day. He had meetings. He's a busy guy. He runs, huge companies. He's got shit to do. So he left just the three of us and just kept bullshitting with him. It was such a fascinating conversation. You guys have heard me when I get in front of somebody that is passionate about a topic, especially a topic like Bitcoin, or not Bitcoin, like crypto, that I've had a strong passion for myself, but have never been able to, other than just listening to, Lex Friedman bring on these crypto geniuses to come try and talk in their, in their really high level language about what this all is. It's kind of hard to follow, but I really enjoy it. And the parts that I can capture, I really have enjoyed. And I really believe a lot in blockchain technology. And I think you've probably heard me talk about it on multiple of the podcasts I've done. But I've never had the opportunity to stand in front of somebody that has that knowledge. Oh, my headphone go out. I just bumped the speaker. Never mind. I never had the opportunity to talk to someone like that. So I just spent hours, you guys. I probably talked to them and Joey for 3 hours, and Joey was in and out during that time. But I got in there at 9. I don't think I left till 2:00 in the afternoon. I was still sitting there bullshitting with him, and I hadn't eaten breakfast. I hadn't eaten nothing. And that's probably the only reason I left, was because I was starving at that point. I needed to go get some food, but I just couldn't stop asking more and more. And I figured, I'll stump these kids eventually, right? I'll ask about one subject or another. And I was also just trying to feel out, where the domains of their knowledge lie, because you could tell that, they knew a lot about crypto, and that was kind of, where they hang their hats in terms of what they're doing currently and where they've found success. But I wanted to push that boundary and to find it. And everywhere I pushed, every question I asked, it was like a fire hose of content coming back at me. And you could just get the sense from them that they knew this stuff inside and out. And this wasn't some kids playing a trick that they're in over their head, and they're honest about what they knew and what they didn't know. They didn't pretend. And more than that is I could tell that they're really good people, that they have, good hearts and that they care and that they want to help people. And that was all they talked about this whole time. And the reason being is they want to start a YouTube channel, the Blockchain Bros, and help other people understand crypto. And they've seen what it did for them of, pulling them out of poverty, giving them something when they've been told their whole lives that they will never amount to anything, that would never realize these really lofty goals that they both always had. And no matter how much the world tried to squash it, they never lost those dreams and those goals. And they want to help other people do it. And it's just beautiful and so up my alley. For anybody listening right now, is probably they're asking questions like, how did you find these kids? And that's what I was asking myself. Like, how did these two amazing kids just fall in my life? And I call them kids. One's just slightly younger than me, like maybe a year. Another one's, a couple of years younger than that. But just, I call them kids because compared to the support that I've had throughout my life and all the things that I've accomplished, that I'm proud of, how much I have to give credit to other people. For them, not the same. Everything they've earned is on them. They put it together. They scrapped and bled and cried and did everything. They sweated, like I was blown away. So we talk for 5 hours. My mind's spinning. I'm just thinking of different ways that I can help them, that they can help me. And I knew we'd do a podcast where maybe talking about doing that the next day. And then I texted them back. Oh, I was thinking maybe there's going to be a quad trip. I was going to hop in with some buddies that day. And I was just waiting to see if that happened. But if not, I said, let's podcast tonight. I don't want to let this go any further. I got to talk to you guys more. So they ended up coming over. They came back over that night at 6:30, 7 o'clock. We bullshitted before, did a 3-hour podcast together, which is amazing. And I cannot wait for you guys to hear it. It is really special for them to tell the story. And they tell their story, and there's other aspects to it that we had to leave. I don't think we had to leave out, but we kind of danced around some of the darker parts of the story too. And it's still amazing when you hear it, but just to know when you guys do hear that story, that's not even everything. Like the way, like that 5 hours that we talked before, I got to hear more of the intricacies of that story. And even after the podcast too, they filled me in on more of it. And as spectacular and almost unbelievable the story is from what you guys are going to hear, just know that there's more to it than that. That is what the craziest part of this was. But just to go in Wednesday with no podcast ahead of me, no prospects, just kind of hoping that things are going to fall into my lap. For something like that to fall in my lap was just weird. Weird is the only word I can use for that one. It just it blew me away. And since then, I've been texting with them. I've been thinking of people that I can introduce them to help them. Because here's the other thing: they got such a raw end of the deal, and they were so turned off. Not by people, that's not the right word, but just by people wanting something from them, and always, they didn't have a very good, they don't have a good history to make them want to just go out and be friends with anybody that walks in off the street that gives them a smile. They're a bit closed off, and I'm thankful that we were able to, I think just, my little bit of knowledge of where they come from, the creed, what a Mennonite is, just to begin with. I think that kind of broke down some of those barriers. And then my clear passion to hear their story and how interested I was, and just the back and forth. I think it was like we were best friends, like right after, a couple hours into talking, we were already, it felt like we're really close. And I can't speak for them, but just from my side, it felt like we're really, connecting, and it was a great experience. And since then, I'm just excited. I can't wait for my dad to meet these two. Like they're characters. I can't wait for them to start their YouTube channel. I cannot wait for these two. And I mean, they use this word too, two redneck kids from Lacrete that are, crypto fucking to me, crypto geniuses, they really like to underplay their knowledge, and just because they understand, they've gone down the rabbit hole and they see how deep it goes. So they always say, oh, we don't know nothing. We're just, we have 1% of the knowledge that's out there. We're trying to learn more, right? And their 1%, really highlights how I'm like 0.0001%, right? There's so much to learn. But to me, like comparatively to the Joe off the street, they're absolute geniuses. And I can't wait to introduce that. And that is what's so special to think of them with a YouTube channel that not only combines all that knowledge that they worked so hard to accrue, but combine that with this great personality and great heart that they have. I think people are going to love them. I fell in love with them in fucking a couple hours. I can't imagine they start putting YouTube videos and start letting a little bit of that personality fly on there, and combine that with actually helping people secure their financials and not be at the beck and call of inflation and monetary policy by whatever countries you find yourself stuck in, right? Like that is what they're truly about. They've seen what it did for them, and that has and that has changed them, right? I think that would be fair to say, and they want it to change other people, and I love that. I love that they just got out of, they just climbed up on top, and they're already putting their hand down. Like usually people, their first instinct, especially when you've been down for a long time and you've been just shit kicked, as soon as you get up on that plateau and you get up there yourself, the instinct is, I'm just going to take a breath. I'm going to enjoy this for a while. I'm not going to put my arm down to help someone else. I just got out of there. What if they pull me back down? But that's not where their heads are at. They want to help. They want to bring this to people. And I just thought that was beautiful. And I had such a good day with them. And I've been excited to talk about them. And I have a couple podcasts before theirs is released. And, I just couldn't let that stand where you guys would not know these kids exist until that podcast comes out, because they're special. And I think they're going to, I don't know. I have a lot of belief that they're going to do some crazy things in the future. Already have done some crazy things. I shouldn't even say that. They've blown my mind already, but I think this is just the start. And you can see that fire in their eyes, that they're just getting started, and that I could do this whole podcast just on those two, I think. Yeah, so that was awesome. Did that with them. Then Friday rolls around. Again, was still reaching out to people. I ended up, I don't know if it's Thursday or Friday, but ended up locking down another podcast for Saturday morning. So I was excited about that. And I kind of had my Friday to fill. If a podcast comes up, great. If I can see some of my friends, great. Simon, who's been on this podcast, was really hoping. As soon as I got to town, I was able to stop in, see him, have a little bullshit, but wanted to see him. He ended up getting caught. He was working up in Red Earth pretty much the whole time I was down in Slave. He was just working like a dog. So I was thinking maybe I'd see him on Friday. Ended up he got busy, but went out, got a text from my buddy Travis Malbeuf, who's been on this podcast. Me and him and another buddy Eric, we all went out for a little quad rip. They have these beautiful side by sides that, I haven't been quadding out in the bush for, I don't know, call it a good at least 5-6 years, I'd say, and just to bring back all those feelings, of the smells, the trails, right? I didn't realize how much I needed it until we were out going and hopping in, smelling that burnt muskeg or whatever it is on the engines. Oh, can't even begin to tell you guys. It was awesome. Getting a boot full of mud, have your foot frozen off. Like usually those are times when you go quadding a lot, like back in the day when I used to do this all the time. If you fall through something you think is frozen, you get a boot full of freezing water and you got to spend the rest of the day with a cold foot, that would be a real damper on your day. But I was missing it so much. Honestly, was just like, it almost added to the experience, which is so silly to say. And I don't think people understand that, what you're excited about a frozen foot. Like, what the fuck, dude? But breaking out the winch and like winching to trees and shit. Like, whenever that happens, I remember this every time when we go on big quad trips. If I ever got stuck, right, you hate being that guy and you someone's running your winch and you feel you're so apologetic, right? Sorry, and that's what they're doing. But it's like, no, guys, like, I miss this. Like, this is so much fun running the winch, like getting a boot full of water. Like, this is awesome. Starting a fire, cooking hot dogs out on a open fire and back in the bush with good buddies, having tons of laughs. Like we always did, right? Like every time I hang out with Travis, since the minute I met him when he moved to town from Winfield, we were always just having a great time. We were always laughing. If we were in classes together, we're laughing. And same thing, I just found it so beautiful how I haven't been to Slave Lake in a couple of years and you haven't seen these guys for a while, and you fall right back into it and you're laughing like you hadn't missed a day. And I really enjoyed it. We had a great time. roll back in. So Eric and Travis had a rec hockey game that night. So we're planning, I was like, oh, I'm going to try and go to the rec game, come watch you guys. That'd be tons of fun to watch. And knowing that, the arena in Slave Lake has a QR code, so I wouldn't be able to get in, but I knew, fuck, I'll sneak in a side door or whatever. Not the end of the world, but just not a great feeling, because then they're worried about, oh, how are you going to get in? And everyone else is worrying about you. And we're planning on going to Boston Pizza for dinner that night. And how are you going to get in there? And I was just thinking, whatever, like, I don't want anyone to change plans for me. And I felt really bad about it, that everyone's, oh, well, where can we go? Where can't we go? And it's like, don't worry about me. Like, if I can't get in somewhere, no skin off my back. I have plenty of people to go see. Like, if I can't get in with you guys, I'll go hang out with, Simon or Clinton, one of my other buddies. There's so many people in Slave Lake I had to see at that point. It didn't really matter, but Travis was so generous again and just said, you know what, let's not risk you getting into BPs. Let's just come over to my place, we'll order pizza, right? Got to see him and Jamie's baby, who is so freaking cute. And I just love kids so much and love babies. I was in my heyday, get to see Jamie again, who's one of my other best friends growing up too. So that was great. Had an awesome time with them. And then my buddy Lance, who I think you guys have heard me talk about it with my dad on the podcast. I've talked about it with a couple people, that he's just one of those guys. He's one of my other best friends from Slave Lake growing up, that I really want to get on the podcast, and he knows this. He saw that I was in town and he was going to the city the next day, knew that if we wanted to see each other, kind of Friday night was our night. So he said, hey, I'll come into town, come watch the rec game with you, which is awesome, right? Like, I was going to have fun just, sitting, hiding in a corner of the rink, wherever, by myself, trying to get caught because I'm a criminal, sneaking there if I could get in, right? But, to have somebody to watch the game with, let alone it be one of my buddies I hadn't got to bullshit with for a long time, that's going to be perfect. So he rolls up, me and him go to the game, sneak in. I was trying to tell him to go in the side door. Lance goes, whatever, you'll get in the front. As we walk in, so I'm like, oh shit, how am I going to get in there? So the big lineup to check your QR code is right when you get in. And as soon as I got past the sliding door where there's like kind of the ribboning off, I just kind of took a hard right and like just speed walked to the bathroom and went and took a piss. And then by then I was in, and it was nothing to worry about. But that feeling of having to, going to a place like the Slave Lake Arena that has so many memories, that is just so much a part of you. It feels like you're home, and to feel like you're a criminal in there, it was not a fun experience. It was, in the moment, it was fine. As soon as I was in there, I wasn't thinking about it, but like thinking about it after and stuff was just, and just the feeling of the whole time of everyone having to work around you. And there's nothing I hate more. I don't want to be a bother to anybody, right? Like, especially for something like this, where there's so clearly everyone that sees it a different way, and I don't want to demonize anyone from that. I think there's a lot of propaganda that makes people think that way, and are putting people again, like trying to make people understand that there's nothing wrong with, an unvaxxed person is just like it's just like making fun of someone for being a Christian, right? That's just, you're free to take kicks, right? They're the unwashed of society, and whatever jokes you want to make, whatever mean things you want to say, it's okay because you have a free reign, right? And we've seen what happens over the years, right? We have Twitter, right? Like any group that you get a free reign to take kicks at, people just take kicks, and you can't hold people to that. That's human nature. If you want to, try and fight that, you're going to be going back thousands of years, right? Like we've seen it, and that's what the cancel culture stuff is too, right? As soon as people get addicted to that feeling, they hop on Twitter and who's the next guy that has slipped up, that has said the wrong thing, because there's free kicks available. Once you get addicted to those free kicks, that's what people are going for. Now that has been weaponized into this, and they can just make whoever they want, which is a terrifying, terrifying idea. I'm speaking of it kind of glibly, but I think it's very important, and it scares me very deeply, kind of the way things are going. And you look at Australia, and you look at everything that's coming in, right? Just these QR codes alone. The fact, if you would have asked me I would have said that because I was already talking about it. And this is the thing. If you go back to the earlier podcast, I talked about this, that vaccine passports can come in, and people would come up to me, you talked about it on the podcast. You're crazy. This will never happen. There's no way people are going to give this government, any government, just politicians aren't trustworthy, the power to say where you can and can't go, to track your movements, to do these, like, there's so many people that just laughed in my face at this, and that's like, no, this is exactly what I said would happen. And this is not the end, not damn near the end. This is just the beginning of where they're pushing, and they're going to push until people push back. And it's scary. It's really scary. But anyway, got in there. Seeing Philgate was so much fun. Like, the reason I want Lance on the podcast, and I don't know, I might have to send this to him before I post it just to make sure he's okay with talking about all this, but just, I think growing up in Slave Lake, and it was funny, me and Dave talked about this on Saturday when I podcasted with him, but there's certain characters in a small town that people kind of play. And it's funny to listen to Dave tell it. It sounds like these characters recur. And he's talking about like kind of my age group, and he sees, you know, echoes of the older guys that all kind of filled those character roles and stuff. And Lance is one of those weird ones. There's not another fucking Lance for miles for, you know, like to try and pigeonhole him into one of those characters. He's a character of its own. He's one of one. And I've always known this. One second, I'm just going to take a little drinky poo of my tea. Oh, delicious, right? I've known this for a long time, but maybe I've just never put this much thought into it, but I always wonder, like, what makes Lance so special? Because he's such a goofball, and he makes everybody laugh around him, and he's always half bullshitting, but half saying truths, and sometimes he's saying things that aren't bullshit, but are just too smart for people to get. And seeing it now, watching him interact with people with a couple more years of wisdom, like, it is fascinating to watch. I think Lance is the smartest guy in the room in a lot of rooms. And I think I've known this for a while, and I think that's why we got along so good, is because Lance doesn't like to let people in on how smart he is. And I think he uses his goofiness to kind of block that sometimes, and people don't realize how fucking smart this kid is. And he kind of gets to play in the background, and he just picks everything up and he takes it in and he remembers. And he's like a fox that way. And it was just so fun to reconnect with him and to talk about, right? Because I just met these crypto kids, and fucking Lance knows way more about crypto than I ever thought he did. He is plugged in on that shit. And that's just, it doesn't surprise me at all. That's who he is, right? And to be ahead of all this stuff, and he learns things in his way. And I think what blinded me from this is, again, going back to this thing I talk about all the time, is you're so programmed to take smart people are people that get good grades in school. And not that Lance got bad grades by any means, but he wouldn't be who I plugged into, you know, the really smart kids, right? That we were, you know, kind of putting on that pedestal of who we thought had intelligence back then. But I know it personally, but I think I never really applied it to other people. But school is boring, right? Like, that doesn't mean that you're not intelligent because you don't want to take on this boring shit. But when it's something like crypto or something that grabs your attention, like Lance, it's the same way. You know, he puts and I should have seen through this, because always, it's not even just intelligence, it's hard work, it's kind of the whole package. Lance just has it figured out. But I should have known this a lot earlier, and I think I did know it. I've just never given it this much thought, I think, because when we all were young and we got our first jobs and shit, we were all pretty lazy at them. And when you're working at 13, 14, nobody really expects much. And you can kind of go get away. That's where you learn to be a worker. You learn to be a good worker by being a shitty worker and catching shit for it and stuff. But Lance was different. I remember Lance's first job was shoveling snow at this clinic by his house. And he started way younger than us. And it'd be like 6 a.m, -40. He'd be out there shoveling the shit, and he had that job, but he did good at it and he took pride in it. And then the next job, he's working at a car wash, right? Like squeegeeing floors. And you could hear by the way, you know, people talked about him and saw that he did a really good job. And he was, you know, sure, it was just pushing a squeegee around doing water, but he did it to the best of his abilities and really made his mark there. And then the next job, I don't know, maybe he had more jobs than this, but then at one point he ended up working at a gravel pit in town, you know, and I was working at the C-store for my dad, and I got to see all the people from that gravel pit come in, and I'd see, you know, the name of the company on there, and, oh, you work with Lance. And the way people would talk about him, I knew he was different than all our friends. And I had a lot of pride. I still have a lot of pride I'm so proud of all my friends, but just specifically in this case of Lance, of the way everyone talked about him, not just a hard worker, right? We knew this about Lance, already discussed this, like works hard, but learns shit and takes it seriously and takes pride in his work. And was all these guys would come in, they'd be like, oh, well, Lance is showing up, all these like 60-year-old men that worked their whole life, and he's working harder than them. He's taking things on that aren't his job. He's jumping to things, right? He's taking it on, and that's always who he's been. So when he started, he works at one of the mills in town now. And when he started there, this was, I don't know, he's probably worked there for years now. I said it to him, and I say it to everyone that listen. I said, he's going to be running that place one day, because that's exactly what he does. And that's how he, if he chose to, maybe he does something else. Maybe he makes billions of dollars doing crypto and he never works a day of his life again. Who fucking knows? But I just, I knew all these things, but this trip to Slave Lake got to remind me of all of them, and I got to experience it, right? So me and Lance just have a ball, just bullshit and, cracking jokes. And the whole time, different people are walking through, because there's rec games going on all the time, and I'm having little mini reunions. I got to see so many people and give people hugs, and just felt so good. And then to see everybody walking by, and Lance knows everybody in town, and is just giving people, like, saying the funniest shit to every single person, and just has all these little inside jokes with all these guys, and like, everyone that sees him smile. Oh, I just had a great time hanging out with him. And then, watched a rec game, went over and watched the Slave Lake Bantam team play. And that was a ton of fun too. We were kind of bouncing between the rec game of all our buddies and this minor hockey game. And it was so reminiscent, because that's all we used to do. You got to understand this. When we were young, me and Lance, like, every Friday, Saturday was, okay, who's playing at the arena? And that's where you went. You were a rink rat. You just go watch game. Okay, at 6:00, there's this game. At 7:00, there's this game. And then there's a Wolves game, right? Wolves was the junior B team in town, and they fought. And if you want to get a good idea of this, there's an episode coming out, the one I did the following day on Friday morning or Saturday morning with Dave. We talked a lot about that culture and what that instilled. But just to get a chance to be back in that rink, feeling those old feelings, and seeing all the girls from high school, watching all the boys play hockey, are all sitting in the same section of the stands that we used to all sit in. And when I used to play out there, that'd be where we'd looking up at the stands for, which girls are here to play. You'd be on MSN Messenger, or you're going to come to a game on Friday, and all this shit. And like, I just can't fully articulate how special it was to reconnect with all these things. And then after the game, it's kind of one of those things where I knew I probably couldn't get into any of the bars, sadly enough, and just didn't want it to end. So me and Lance figured, we'll go grab a case of beer, and we'll go back to the house, because my parents are out of town. We'll just have beers and see if we can, make a party there, see who we can get. And got halfway home, and another one of our buddies ended up needing a ride. He probably had a few too many during the rec game or whatever, but he came and joined us. So we whipped around, picked him up, brought him back to the house, and started texting people, and the three of us just had spent a couple hours just drinking beers and bullshitting and catching up, hearing all the stories, and hearing all the gossip, what's going on with all these different people. And I was just eating it up. I couldn't get enough. And 11:30 rolled around, or whatever time, because they had shit to do in the morning. They rolled out, and I just drank a little bit of water, because I knew I had to be podcasting at 9 a.m. Went to bed. It was a bit of an 8 a.m. came a bit early, but rolled out of bed, because I don't drink much either. We probably only had some beers out quadding, and then I don't know. Anyway, had a few, we'll call it. And so woke up right at 8 a.m. and just went and sat in the shower for 20 minutes and just kind of, got my life together. Went out, cleaned up all the beer cans from the kitchen, because my mom made sure that the house was going to be clean when Dave rolled up. And then, I had everything spick and span. And then Dave LaFrance, who you guys will get to hear in a couple weeks, probably his episode. Dave, his wife was my first grade teacher. Dave was a big sports guy, came to Slave Lake for work, and kind of got ingratiated into the town through playing junior B hockey for the Wolves back then. And we talk about all this, and just has he's such a bright guy and a friendly guy, and his humor matches very much with mine, and we get along great. And it was so fun to just have a conversation where some of the topics were not super, I think deep is the wrong word. Like they are deep and they're passionate, but they're very particular to, I feel like anybody that's ever spent some time in a small town is really going to appreciate that. I think we really highlight what it is that small town and community does. And I just thought it was an amazing conversation that dovetailed so nicely with everything I was feeling at that point, that just wrapped up everything I'm trying to convey on this podcast. I'd probably do a better job talking with Dave there, but I want to talk about the humor, because talking about all this, but every 2 or 3 minutes, it never got too sucked down or too serious, because he's such a funny guy. that he was making me laugh all the time. And then someone like that, I like to compete, right? If someone's that funny, I like to try and, make him laugh. And then we're going back and forth. So we just spent hours from, like 9 till noon, just laughing and telling great stories and, getting a little misty, telling emotional stuff, talking about his kids and talking about what that is and coaching and my relationship with my dad growing up, him coaching with hockey and everything. It was just beautiful to kind of pick a guy's brain that's been down a path that I want to go down myself, of kind of that fatherhood path, and done it so beautifully, where I know his kids and I know the relationship with him that they have, and that's what I want. And to kind of, ask a couple questions, and everyone's life's going to be different. So you kind of got to take everything with a grain of salt, but just to get his take on how it all came together and what is meaningful, what really matters at the end of the day, and kind of take what I thought was the right ideas and kind of run it by him and just say, is this right? Is there, am I missing something here? And he just did an amazing job at that. And we had a great time. And then probably could have stayed another night and, went quadding with the buddies, but I don't know if I've talked about this on the podcast before, but I have a real anxiety of being away from home. And right now home is Grand Prairie. That's where my stuff is. Right. And I have my parents' place in Edmonton. I have my home, like my childhood home that I was staying at in Slave Lake, right? And so technically I have home a lot of places, but for whatever reason, it's where my stuff is. It's where I can be comfortable and nobody's watching me. I don't have any expectations here, and that's here in Grand Prairie right now. And that's why it's important for me to set something that up that is in a better place for my support system. That's something I'm working on. I'm working on getting this house up for sale, talking with the realtors, getting some stuff done, getting clean so we can shoot some photos and get it on the market here soon. So that's all exciting. And then the process is starting to look at places in Edmonton and all the things that come with that, which is really exciting because I think there's so many big things, like I talked about at the very start of this podcast, that are really, keeping me up at night of I should be doing this and I should be doing that. And I know it's just another excuse, and I could definitely be jumping on a lot of them, but there's also a bunch of different ways where having home base be in Edmonton and having a place there would be incredibly, incredibly helpful for as well. So I know it's a bit of an excuse and a bit of actual reality that the excuses aren't 100% an excuse. There's some reality within it. And then just on top of that too is just creating a schedule. I think that's what I'm struggling so much with, is trying to come up with a schedule where I'm in GP for a couple of days, Slave Lake, Edmonton, and I just can't really lock in. I would love to have it secure where I know I'm going to be and I don't need to do any traveling. It's not going to be thrown out, where I can kind of bring everything to me, right? Edmonton is so central that I still want to do trips and stuff, but if I can make it so it's not, I have to, only do a couple days at home and then go out just to keep things moving and keep forward momentum with the podcast and stuff. If I could have that be already happening at the place where I live, and then be able to do those trips out of town as kind of an added bonus, as icing on the cake. Not that is the cake, right? You have to go out on the town to make your bones, right? And then things like that of, it's tough because I know I need to be streaming, but then I come back from my 3 or 4 days in GP before I'm off to the next one. I know I should start the streaming thing, but I know I'm not going to be consistent with it because my computer and everything's here, and then I'll be on the road and I'll be in Edmonton. I won't be able to do it. And again, 100%, that is all an excuse, and I'm just being a pussy, and I need to just jump into it and do it. But a little bit of truth to it, right? So that's that's been what's on my mind. Listen to a couple great podcasts that I wanted to mention. One was with Duncan Trussell, the Duncan Trussell Family Hour, and they had on these two people from Veterans Exploring Treatment. And this is something that the subject, something I've talked about on the podcast, and I've listened to 100 podcasts on this subject, but it's about using not strictly hallucinogenic drugs, using drugs paired with therapy to help PTSD, particularly with veterans, and the amazing efficacy and response we're seeing, and how sad it is that it's not catching on faster, which it is. It's, when you really look at how far it's come in the last couple of years, it's on a rocket ship. It's expanding as fast as possible, but nothing's fast enough because there's people suffering, there's people that need it. And the biggest thing holding it back is this taboo that we have within society around drugs and what we think it is. And I think that's so sad to me, that we have these people that have put their lives on the line to fight for the rights that I guess we don't really care about these rights that they're fighting for that much, because we're just handing them over to the government like willy-nilly right now. But I'm not, and I don't think you guys should be either. And I think that's what's so important about this is these people fight for these things, and we need to treat them a certain way, and we're not. And they need to have access to whatever the best thing that could help them today is what they should have access to. We shouldn't let some old school feeling, some old propaganda from back in the day that drugs are bad stand in the way from these people getting psilocybin-based treatments, peyote, ketamine, MDMA. All of these things are all function different and are all tools that are within this toolkit, but people are locked away from it altogether because it falls under this taboo of drugs, which is so silly. Whatever works. It shouldn't have that, but I think it's great. If you are interested, if that subject sounds like something that may be up your alley, please go check it out. It's a great episode. I think Joe Rogan's had some people on from to talk on this subject as well, so you can find help there too, as well. I believe Lex Friedman has had some people on to talk about it as well, and all sorts of podcasts. Just if you start to look into these therapies, you're going to be amazed. If you've never looked into it before, you should. You will be blown away. I promise you. And then the other one was I talk about this podcast all the time on the podcast, Dark Horse Podcast with Brett and Heather Weinstein. They're the ones that I've been highlighting their information that they've been putting out in their analysis of this COVID reality we're living in, and their take on the science, and them using their extensive medical background or scientific evolutionary background to kind of assess and at least put forth questions and highlight inconsistencies. And they've been just doing the Lord's work essentially, but they did kind of a little bit of a different one. Usually the Dark Horse Podcast is him and his wife, and they answer questions and they accumulate things throughout the week in papers that they want to cover on Saturday, and then they do a Q&A. This one was a little different. Heather wasn't there, and Brett had on, I can't remember her name. She's a lady from Australia, and the podcast is called No Exceptions, A Story of Medical Tyranny in Australia. And there's a lot of things going on in Australia that are really backwards. I think if you want to look at the future of where we're headed in Canada right now, Australia is the first place to look. I think we're sadly not that many steps behind them. But this is a story about a lady that is probably, if there's any case for a medical exemption from the vaccine, she is it. Hook, line, and sinker. There's no ifs, ands, and about it. She is allergic to multiple things within all of the vaccines, has had extreme history of anaphylaxis due to a lot of things, and her reaction with epinephrine, which is fake adrenaline. That's what is in those EpiPens. That's what they stab you when you're having a anaphylactic shock. If your throat's closing up, that's what they hit you with. She has reaction to that stuff too. She doesn't react well. She's just kind of one of those people that is allergic to almost everything under the sun, has to be extremely careful. This is all documented. She's suffered with this for years, right? And has been working with this. So she realized, she works for a catering company, with the new rules coming in that say, even if she was locked within her own catering truck, not seeing anybody, she is not allowed to work, which again, I know that makes no sense and there's no logic to it, but none of this has logic to it. But that's why, they want to enforce it past the point of logic to make sure that you're not questioning. You're not on the other side. You're one of the good guys, right? You're not one of those anti-vax scum people that, they've painted as demons for this long, right? Me, I'll put my hand up, right? I'm that scum. Yeah, I'm a terrible human being with terrible choices that believes in magnets and all these things. Yeah, that's, anybody that's listened knows that's me to a T. Anyway, so thinks, right? Doesn't think anything of it. Like open and shut case. I should be able to. I'm going to get an exemption. There's no way. So goes to a general practitioner and she gets told, I can't give you an exemption. There's too much, what's the word? Like legal, she's open legally to too many things if she's do that, which blows my mind, right? You'd think about the legalities if she said, yes, you can get vaccinated, and then she has this crazy anaphylactic shock and dies, right? That's where the legality should be. But they have this all programmed to be, nobody wants to touch it. No doctor wants to be on anything. Even if they truly believe the other side of it, they just know that it's pretty much, professional suicide to even mention any of this. And that's why it's so brave of all these thousands of doctors that are speaking up and are risking their whole livelihoods, their families' livelihoods, getting deported in a lot of ways. I know there's a ton of doctors that come from other countries that have chosen Alberta specifically as their home and are speaking up right now at huge risk to themselves of how this stuff isn't right and how this is not following science and how politics and power structures have completely overrun how science and medicine should actually work. Anyway, so she gets told that. She goes, holy shit, like that's crazy. And she says, well, what do I do? And she says, well, you'll have to go to your, I can't remember what it's called, but the hospital where she had done all her allergy testing, the one that is documented, the one that has diagnosed her with all these allergies, right? Like, it sounds like the right place to go. Okay, so the general practitioner, even though in Australia they say if you want an exemption, you can go to your general practitioner. We say, let's go here. So she goes there, and she gets told, you know what? No, you come in here. We'll figure out some way to give you the vaccine safely. And she's like, no, that's not what I'm after. Like, I want an exemption. She goes, oh, we don't give exemptions. And what they wanted to do is just to give her the vaccine and have an EpiPen there, right? Give her a dose of epinephrine to counteract the very likely fact that she'd go into anaphylactic shock. And she's just like, no, like that isn't, obviously not. I'm not doing that. I've every time I've been shot with an EpiPen, I've had worse and worse reactions from it. I lose consciousness, like all this stuff. It's an awful experience. I don't want to go through that. These exemptions, if I can't have an exemption, who? So you're just saying there's no exemption. So why are we even going through all this dog and pony show? And then it gets wilder than that. Then they start lying to her about your things being processed. It's not, it's illegible. You guys have to listen to this. It is wild, the extent that they're going to. And it so clearly highlights that this isn't about science. This is about something much deeper than that. And people have taken this on as identity. It's identity politics at the end of the day. And that's what's standing in front of people's health. And there's people dying right now. This is, again, people are so keen to make, and again, vaccines have a place in this. They always did. And there's a better way to roll them out. I'm not against it. I'm against mandating it for sure. That is way past the point of where I draw my line, but there's treatment options. And I feel like this is where my blood gets boiled the most, is there's people, and there's probably people listening to this podcast right now that have lost somebody to COVID. And there was treatments available. Right? Top of the top, monoclonal antibodies, that seems to be the best thing, right? I know Joe Rogan's been very vocal on this, as how much it helped him, how much it's helped the people that he has prescribed it to, his friend Ari. Aaron Rodgers, he always highlights, is when he got sick, that's what they gave him, along with all these other things, right? Fluvoxamine, hydrochloroquine has an iffy record for it, but is set in front of it, just has a little bit slightly more risk. But then you look at something like ivermectin that has about the same profile for positive than hydroxychloroquine, but also where ivermectin has some really, really substantial anecdotal stories, like Uttar Pradesh in India, that has pretty much eradicated their whole, I don't know if it's a state or an area within India of COVID, and they really attribute that to widely distributed ivermectin use. That's what they did at a certain point in the pandemic. They just said, hey, shit's getting really, really, when it was getting really, really bad in India, and we're seeing all over, they just gave it to every household and said, everyone get on this. If you feel sniffles, if you don't, just everyone take this. And it really knocked it right down, right? That's super anecdotal. Maybe there was other things that took place. I'm not here to say it, but there's things there. Now, understanding that, due to nothing but politics, they are told there's no treatment. The treatment is give them Advil, go home. If you get sick enough, come to the hospital. If you get sick enough, we'll intubate you, which is okay for maybe, sorry, I'm getting angry at this. I will give a pass for me the first 2-3 months of the pandemic, right? March, April, May, June. Once you start getting into the summer, I think that's past the point. We were very much aware. At the start, you don't know what we're doing. We're doing the best we can. All those treatments I just listed were at the very best, hypothetical at that point, right? Like there's nothing to do. And intubating, we thought that was the best thing to do. And we're doing that. People that are now 2 years into this, 1.5 years into this, that are still following that due to nothing but politics and theater, are sticking to that mindset that there's no treatments. This is what we do. That are following it because they don't want to admit fault. It's people dying. There's people losing their lives. There's people losing loved ones because they refuse to. And not only that, is when you see your loved one dying in front of you, they said, we've done everything we can, which everything they can is we didn't do anything until they got sick enough that we put them on an intubator. And that's, that's what we think everything we can is. And they said, well, have you tried ivermectin? Right. And again, I'm not saying that's a problem. If they were educated and if it was around, what they should have asked were, have you tried monoclonal antibodies? Have you tried fluvoxamine? Have you tried ivermectin? You throw in the kitchen sink at, they're going to fucking die anyway. Why would you? And they will stand in the way and they say, no, we have not tried ivermectin. Is not. And they say, well, can you try it? He's going to die anyway. And they say, no. They say, can we give it to him ourselves? And they say, no. And they have to go either get it on the internet like I did. And now I have some on hand for this reason. And I talked to, while I was in Slave Lake, I talked to many people more that told me, and these anecdotal stories, but with people I know, with names I know, and I knew that they got really sick and I didn't know how they got better. And they're telling me these stories of using ivermectin as a last resort and having some pretty impressive results. And the fact that they're standing in the way of people, right? Like this has nothing to do with, well, it does have something to do with the vaccines. I think that's why they've demonized ivermectin, because on the emergency use exemptions for the vaccines, they were saying there can be no widely available alternative treatments, right? That's why they're standing in the way of it. But the fact that is still the case and that it's still being demonized and that there's treatments out there, but they don't want people to understand, because as soon as people understand that, there is treatments for this, right? Whether you catch it and you get really sick and you're vaccinated or not vaccinated, you should want treatments. That shouldn't matter to you. It shouldn't matter what decision somebody made. Once somebody's sick, you shouldn't care about any of their politics. It's human life. You want them to live, and there's treatments out there and we're not doing it. God, that hurts me. And you can extend that out to, like this two-tiered society of what rights you can have, whether you get this vaccination or not. And that's one thing, but you take that back to this treatments, that's where my line is really crossed. And I think there's blood on some people's hands here. And I think that is something that we're going to see as more things come to light. And now there's things coming out, right? Like today I released my episode with Brendan. We talked about a lot of this stuff, and I wasn't on the top of my game. And so many of these things I just backed down on. And, I kind of conceded points and I shouldn't have, and it haunted me ever since that conversation. It's really haunted me because I care a lot about this, and I should have stood my ground on it. But where was I even going with that? I don't know. Yeah, this is it's a scary situation. It's tough. I worry about it, and I worry about who's benefiting from this, and all these authoritarian countries that are loving this. Nobody's laughing harder right now but China. China loves this. You guys are taking, the biggest thing that was the biggest threat to China, the fact that we have freedom, that we have rights, and that, that is hard to keep a couple billion people locked down and taking away all their rights, when you can look across the pond and you can see that there's China, or there's America and Canada, that people, have rights and they're inalienable rights that people, that the government owes to them and that they could never take away. Well, that was only true until a couple months ago. Now they're looking at, they're getting closer and closer to us every day. That big threat that we existed to them is being chipped and chipped away, and they're not firing a shot. Everyone is so worried about going to war with China. And I always said this, I don't think there'll ever be a hot war with China. I don't think they have to. I think they're playing this perfectly right now, whereas we're doing all the work for them. They are getting exactly what they want right now. And our social media is so vulnerable to attack, and so vulnerable to people to just fan the flames of hate and pull people apart and get people so scared that they're willing to give up these rights, right? Like the only way these rights be given up is if there has been, a year and a half of fear propaganda just pumping nonstop through these mainstream media outlets into people's homes and through social media and all these things, and everyone not falling for it hook, line, and sinker, because that puts some negative connotations on it, but just taking it for truth, right? Like within that realm that they live in, within that echo chamber, again, puts negative connotations on it, but I don't even mean it, because we're all in echo chambers, right? Right, left, center, you all have whatever you see, but within that, what they're doing the right thing. They're being that upstanding citizen. They're being what they think they want to be, and what they think they're going to get those pats in the back for. And I have some real questions for the motivations there, and whether it's all above board. I really I know it's not. There's been clear indications of it the whole time, right? One of the biggest ones you guys have heard me talk about a million times on Merck and them demonizing their own drug and ivermectin that's off patent when they have their own coming out, right? Like that's just one small piece of the pie that you get to see that this is completely backwards. The fact that the WHO is still dictating what anybody can put onto social media anywhere, and they have so many conflicts of interest in this, and they have their fingers in the cookie jar, Peter Daszak and all these guys. Like, I don't know. It's at a certain point where you want to keep faith that people will realize this at some point, but so much provable, right? When Fauci's emails leaked, I thought, oh, okay, well, this is gonna be last, right? He's caught in a lie, not caught in a lie, caught in hundreds of lies, so perfectly right there, and people just turn a blind eye to it. It's like, well, at what point is this gonna change, right? Like and I don't think it's gonna. That's why I said, like, I think we're on a very dangerous, slippery slope right now that people don't understand, and that they just want to, I think, to maybe it makes themselves feel better to tell themselves a story about some alternative way to read all this. But I don't know. I'd much rather not, feel a little bad about it, have to feel some of those feelings and be at least educated on what's really happening around and to me, than to feel good about it and be completely blind again. Is not, I don't know. At a certain point, I got to stop. No, I don't have to stop, because I feel like to fight for this cause the right way, everything is forcing me to turn on the other side of it and to demonize and to fuck that, turn it into a fuck you match of fuck these people that, like, wake up, you fucking sheep, all that shit. But that doesn't help. And it's so tempting to fall into that. But I know at the end of the day, that's not what is needed, and that's not what's going to change people's opinions. But you can see the forces that are there and how easy it would be. And again, how easy it is to be on the other side and just say, to fall into that rhetoric. Well, let's just fucking kill all the unvaxxed people. They don't care about other people anyway. And, it's like driving drunk. What? How is it like driving drunk? That is the most immoral, like clearly fraudulent equivalency you could make. It's so stupid. It's like driving without a seatbelt, maybe, like that makes it still is completely fraudulent and not equivalent at all. But at least that's better. Like they've started to frame this as if people that refuse this vaccination are now putting other people in danger, when it's so not the case. And in fact is the exact opposite in some ways when you understand how these vaccines work and how viruses work to they just mutate on their own, and how the environment you create around them dictates how they mutate and what things happen with it. And now you take a vaccine that is going to have waning protection, and you give it to people that don't need it, and give the virus opportunities to mutate around it, so that when it gets to people that do need that protection, it has less effect. That is not a smart way to roll out, right? And that was what I was saying before they did it, and then they did it, and now we're seeing it. And then you look at realities like the fact that you look at like numbers of just, okay, how many people died in 2020 from COVID? Okay, well, now we got these vaccines. The numbers should be going way down. 2021 should be better. No, it's not, right? It's much worse, right? And you look at this and you go, okay, so if our big strategy, we took all these strategies like testing, like treatments, and we threw those in the garbage for vaccines, and now we're at the stage where we tried that, and they're trying to say, oh, no, it's not that. Our again, I don't want to put this on the head of the vaccine. It's the rollout around them and how they demonize everything else to put this ahead and stop, active message that was going to save lives, to push this narrative, right? Like, yeah, they want to, they've somehow snuck it in there that not like, no, it's not that we messed up with our rollout. It's not that we overpromised with what this was going to be, that, everyone gets a shot and it's back to normal, which was never going to be the case. That there's emails that say that they knew that this was never going to be the case. And then now they're saying, no, it's not that. It's just that not enough people are vaccinated. Okay, so then let's look at countries that have really high, let's look at states that have really high vaccination rate. And in no way is there any evidence to support that. And yet that's the narrative they're pushing through. That no, we don't need to evaluate. No, we're still doing great. It's everyone else's fault, right? Like in no way is anybody taking accountability for errors in their own rollouts and errors in their own judgments, and they're just going to go back to the same stuff, right? It's lockdown. It's these things that we've been over them and we've proved that they didn't work. And there's other opportunities out there to try something different, but nobody wants to give it a chance. Nobody wants to admit fault or to admit that there might be a better way. So they just keep going back to the well of what's worked for them so far, or what hasn't worked so far. But they're going to keep beating that drum till they put the drumstick right through it, I guess. That's what it seems like. So not to be a little bit of a Debbie Downer, but it's tough to sit here and watch it and be just, I don't know. And within my echo chamber, which I'll fully admit I'm within that echo chamber, and I'm well aware of it, and I'm conscious about adding things into it and trying to see other sides of it and making sure. I mean, the biggest one that I have that pops my echo chambers every time I go onto Instagram, because every one of my friends, right, this is very isolating too, of like every one of my friends from university is all just just everything I've said on this podcast, they are that I'm against, and they are pushing it, making memes about it and all these things. And you wonder, who made that meme, right? Is that come from the whatever intelligence agency or whatever it's called in Russia? Is that a Chinese asset? All these people that have proven that, like, some huge percentage of all Facebook, of all Twitter pages are all fraudulent people that are trying to sow discourse, and you're just sharing willy-nilly all this stuff that just pushes these narratives that these huge corporations are behind, that these huge governments are behind, that nobody asks questions. And then you just hope that on the ground, the realities that manifest from them are positive, and then they don't, and they're negative, and we're still stuck in the same thing, and things aren't getting better. And everyone refuses to ask the real questions that need to be asked. They just take on, well, what's the next thing? Okay, so you said this is what we need to do to get out of this. Okay, that didn't work. Okay, this is what we need to do. Okay, that doesn't work. Okay, this is what we need to do. This doesn't work. How long are we just going to keep going in the cycle where they just keep extending it? Sorry, guys. I'm getting a little dry, but I'm going to keep slinging this message. You can always come here. Not every piece of information comes from a lot of places, but the best source of information you can get, if you want to have unbiased people just looking at this for the best they can make of it, go to the Dark Horse podcast. I know I've had probably 50 different people come up to me and thank me vehemently, I think it is. Just thank me very profusively for showing them the Dark Horse podcast and for what that's given to them and the information. And the message I keep getting is how the fear has dissipated, and just with someone will talk to them like an adult. Like some of this is high level science shit and you don't need to know it all, but to know that they're not trying to dumb it down to you like the government of just, and that was Brennan's big argument, is they're just trying to dumb this down so we can understand it. That is so much evil has been perpetrated through the education system, through the medical system. So much gets pushed through politicians. Oh, you guys just won't understand this. We're just going to push this through this funding bill, all this stuff, right? But just the alleviation of fear when you hear somebody that's quite clearly intelligent and quite clearly has a passion for this and has looked into it deeply. They treat you like an adult and they give you the information, the scary shit, the unscary shit, the sorry again, the questions that they have. Once you get to there, you get a much more accurate picture, because I think the scariest part of this all is none of this really makes sense to people, and it never has at any point. They're always keeping more information withheld, so what they're laying out to you doesn't really make sense. It doesn't add up, and all they just fill that with is fear. And once you start to make sense of it, you still have fear, because when you really understand it, there is things to be scared of. This disease is not great. You do not want to catch this, right? Not to say it's going to kill you, right? It's not like this 50% death rate, right? And to me, like I've said all along, I'm not worried about people dying. That's, a very rare occurrence with this. I'm worried about after effects and long-term effects of this thing. It's a wonky disease that was made in a lab, fucked within a lab, not made in a lab. I don't have any trust. I don't want it in my body. I don't want my family's body. I don't want anybody to catch this, but it's also not what they're painting it out to be. It's not Ebola. It's not the bubonic plague. It's not to say that it's nothing, but you got to find that middle ground, because if you just take what they have to say, then they whip you into this fear frenzy. That is what has people serving up their rights on a silver platter for people and putting democracy itself and justice in jeopardy here. That is what we're faced with. And I think we're going to have more and more people leaving Canada, going down to the States, trying to find some bastion of sanity within this, right? Like, I got to be honest with you guys, I think about it every goddamn day. Every day I think about it. Just leaving, just getting up and getting out of here, trying to escape. And the thing is, I don't even know if I could. I think I'm going to have to claim, what's that? Sanctuary. I don't know what movie that's from. I think it was not Pocahontas. Humpback in Notre Dame. I don't even remember anything from that movie. I just remember some guy yelling sanctuary at the start of it. I might have to, try and find sanctuary somewhere, because they're not letting you out of the country. I don't think they'd let you out of the province. I'm not even supposed to go to the store right now. I'm a criminal if I even associate with people, right? Like, that was the funniest thing of people saying, like, oh, can you get in the arena and say, like, can you do this? Can you do this? And I was telling, technically, I'm not even supposed to be seeing you right now. Like, I'm already a criminal. I don't give a fuck. Like, unless they have a system, which is what's happening with these QR codes, it's a lot harder to sneak around it. But God, is that just really what we want to? And also, is it even to have these people that are being pushed to the fringe of society through all this and through all this theater? Do you want to lock them in their house and just have them be radicalized by the stuff? Do you think that is a good outcome? Do you think this ends positively either which way? Like, I don't know. I'm sad that this has gotten this far. And I think there was at so many points a real courageous leader or somebody courageous to stand up and say some of these things at a few key points could have been there. But unfortunately, we have such weak people in positions of power. And I think that highlights just what a farce the political system has come. And I think that's my biggest takeaway of the whole thing is just that shit matters and it matters deeply. And there's big change that need to happen. And I think they know that too. And that's why they're using these power grabs to really hold on and entrench themselves deeper, because they see the tide changing. They see the internet waking people up to what government and these corporations have done over the last years and how they treat people. And I think that's why they're doing this last bastion of this last attempt at ceding control forever. That's kind of what they're after right now. It seems at least that's part of it. It's not 0%. Might not be 100% either, but it's not zero. And one more great resource right now has been Russell Brand, who is a comedian, an actor, probably not something you would think to be entering this type of realm, but he's got a YouTube channel and he just takes news stories and really highlights it, and he does it in a funny way. They're comedic. They're like 5-10 minutes, not much to take in. Listen on double speed. There you go. Even less. But I think that has been a huge source of sanity for me, of just having, well, at least somebody else in the world is seeing the same shit that I is, right? Oh boy, I can't even talk anymore. It's probably a sign that I should wrap this stuff up. My words are starting to fall out of my mouth. But that's another great one. Go check him out. I can't speak high enough of him either. But other than that, I love you all. You're great. Whatever side of this you're on, try and have compassion for that other side. Try and find that middle ground. Ask some questions. Speak up, right? If you have a business or something and you see someone, you don't have to do these people's bidding. Fucking, yeah. Say you're doing the QR code and don't fucking do it, right? Like just, you just, for the camera, show me a piece of paper, right? Just any piece of paper, right? Just pretend to scan shit. I don't know. Fight back somehow. Be that brave company that says, no, we're not putting this QR code thing and we're not letting our business shut down because it's either put the QR code in or we'll shut your business down. Not effectively, but we'll put restrictions on it so that you can't operate. Stand in their face. People have been standing in the face of these restrictions for months now. There's brave people that have been doing this. We have the path set. Do that, right? Champion fucking Jim and GP. They are so polite to any health care, but they stand their ground. They still find that middle ground to walk. And I'm so proud of them. And I think they do an amazing job. And I think we need more of that, right? There is a way to do this. This is not impossible. Oh, one last thing. If you think vaccinating fucking kids is in any way fucking logical, any way follows science, you are fucking backwards. I can't stand this. If you can watch the news videos of them injecting these kids with this thing when they're at so little risk at this point, and if that changes, we can always vaccinate at that point. But if that doesn't make you sick to your stomach and make you want to cry a little bit, I don't know what's in you. Or I feel bad for what propaganda has been going in your head, because that is backwards. And that, I know I talk about my line in the sand being crossed months and months and months ago, over a year ago, right from the start. My line was crossed by government years before this. And I was, the perfect guy to be on the watch out for this stuff. And I'll take that, people will call me whatever names they want to. That's fine. But if your line in the sand extends past kids, I don't know. That's where I really started to break of this holding compassion for every party in this. And I know that's an easy one. If it's these people that have been brainwashed into thinking that this is what's protecting your kids, and you don't realize what risk you're putting them at. Like when you look at the risk profile of what risk they have, I just, that makes me sick to my stomach. Absolutely sick to my stomach. And I wish I wouldn't have picked the end of the podcast to lay that out, but maybe that's important. That's where you need to leave it. Maybe that's the taste you need left in your mouth, is that, because that, to me, that was one of those things where I saw so much of this coming, and I called it, and I thought, but they won't go after the kids because people stand up too much. That, that'll be a step too far. And clearly it isn't, or at least not for some people. It is for a lot of people. And I have heard a lot of people standing up, and that is kind of this point of, hey, I've stood silent for this long, but now is not the time. But yeah, whatever you can do. I don't expect anybody to start, becoming a warrior for this cause or anything, but just in the small ways you can help out, it is important, and it doesn't go for nothing. So yeah, other than that, have a great try and find the positivity where you can find it. Have a great week. I love you all. You're great. Thank you so much for letting me do this. If you could do all those things for the podcast, follow in the social medias. Oh, maybe this is something I should talk about, is I'm interested. So there's a thing called shadow banning. It's on all social medias, but specifically Instagram's bad for it. And I've seen examples of this with people that I follow. And it's something where if you typed in the Von, right? Maybe not the Von Dub, still you can until you type out the Von Dubcast fully perfectly how I have in the name, it won't pop up. Which is their little way of, trying to reduce traffic. And a bunch of people have told me already, hey, you're shadow banned. Oh, all right. I kind of figured that was a question that, when I was 8 episodes in and I did an episode on Hong Kong and talking about the abuses of the Chinese Communist Party and all that stuff, I was thinking, well, I'm probably not going to be too looked upon too highly in the eyes of the algorithms to start anyway, and probably shoot myself in the foot. But I kind of was aware this is coming, but it's still good to know. So if you do realize that, if you go to type in the Von Dubcast and search it, if you hear this podcast and you can't find it, just let me know. It's good to know. Take a video of you, if you screen record, you trying to type it in, that's always good. And I've seen lots of comedians that have been shadow banned and all these different podcasters. Once you start kicking up a fuss and showing to Instagram, conveniently, they back off a little bit. So I'm hoping that maybe I can get a little bit of that going. But if you do see that, please help me. But I don't know. Even if you don't, I don't care. If you're listening to this right now, you're already doing so much for me that I don't want to ask anything extra from you, because it means so much that you're here to listen to me blabble and babble like I do. So I love you. Stay strong. Stay safe. Tell everybody around you that you love them. And if you see something wrong happening in front of you, say something. That's all I ask. All right. Okay. See you guys.